Hi there, and welcome to Insomnia Open Class. I'm really excited to be here with you today and answer questions from the community. And Coach Alina is going to join us today. I'm just going to send her a quick message to make sure she got my link, and there are no problems with that. In fact, I see her right here, so I don't even need to do that. Here she is.
Hi, Daniel. We are live already. Yeah.
Oh, wait, I sorry. And can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Do you hear
very
me?
good. I had this lav mic in, so I couldn't hear you because your
I
sound
see.
went into
Okay.
that thing. So how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Very, very well. For those of you who don't know you, by the way, where in the world are you, and what time zone are you in?
I'm in Central European time zone in Slovakia, so it's I think we have 9 hours difference. I'm like front, like in the future.
In the future, exactly.
Yeah,
So
calling you
it's
from the
11
future.
here, so it'll be like, is it 8
It's eight.
o'clock for you?
It's 8 o'clock. It's already evening. Yeah.
Very, very nice. And so for those of you who've already joined, please, share your questions, and we'll answer them together here. And as we do, what's going on your end, Alina? What do you want to tell us about, like all the things you're doing on Instagram, YouTube, and other things?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, smooth and steady, and not maybe not so many news since last time we spoke, but I'm now looking for more ways how to, expand maybe my presence on YouTube, and I'm like thinking about like new possible topics for content. So yeah, I do a lot of this kind of planning work, which is not yet in production, but more in this kind of planning phase. But I plan to start creating more content, and I'm slowly moving on with my something like a course or something like this, where I just put like down all the things, like the teachings, in one kind of comprehensive form. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. So far it goes pretty slow, because there's a lot of things to say, and so, and you know how abstract things are usually, especially explaining like how to approach sleep efforts, and all this kind of like practices, acceptance, befriending wakefulness and things like that. They are like, if you just say it like this, it sounds kind of like easy in theory, but then when you get to practice, there's a lot of kind of hidden like tricks or hidden traps that people can fall in. So I'm kind of like trying to cover it from all possible sides, so that you don't have any questions left when it comes to understanding acceptance, kindness, and concepts like that. So yeah.
Sounds really wonderful. And is it like in video form, the like lessons or curriculum, or is it written, or what is it?
No, it's written. I would like to do it in the form of letters, and it's kind of like an automated newsletter course, where it's like maybe every day you get like a new lesson to your email address, so you just read it whenever you want, and it's like very, so far they are very long, so I assume it's not for people who like this kind of like bite-sized things. So it's more like for who want to dig into the specifics of insomnia recovery. So yeah.
Sounds really nice. And by the way, the reason I was, as in my usual fashion, I just sent you the link to this class like right before we started. Was I actually, I'm redoing our Insomnia Immunity program, and the last sort of like final verse or something became what I've been pondering so much, which is I know that and many in the community know, of course, that oftentimes once the struggle with sleep is fading or over, people go into this kind of like deeper exploration of like the inner journey continues. Like people go into like a spiritual journey, and then I've been thinking a lot like I love this topic too. Why not kind of make the memberships kind of go on forever? Like drop a little hints here and there, like forever. And I don't know if you're thinking a little bit on the same lines with your membership. That is it going to be open ended, or is it going to be like a certain amount of weeks, or what are you thinking?
I'm thinking like currently for this course, it's more like educational like background. So there is not much, you can I mean, of course, there's a lot to keep going, but when it comes to insomnia, like in terms of this kind of course what I'm currently writing, it will be kind of limited to sleep itself. But then, of course, it invites, like the concepts. Actually, this is what people kind of stumble upon on their own as they start understanding the teachings. They see like, okay, but I can actually use this in other areas of my life,
Yes.
where, let's say, anxiety or any other things. So and I actually see this, that I mean, currently I also have a newsletter that I'm posting, like I'm publishing every week, and this is something like an ongoing thing. So far it's like it's free. So this is where I get into like small like nuances, and maybe not exactly about like sleep itself, but also about like broader concepts. So yeah. So something like this, I do have like an ongoing communication. Not, I mean, it's not yet like the, it's not closed one, so that means it's kind of anyone can join for free and just receive it every week, something. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. So everything is experimental. It's just I try to kind of like balance between when you set on some path, sometimes you might feel like kind of you're tied to a particular thing, and you feel like you cannot actually change direction or something like this. But I try to keep options open, so that if I start something, that I will see if it doesn't go well, then I will just stop doing it. So it's like, so I don't feel any I don't know, guilt for killing some projects. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's so helpful. It keeps us flexible. So okay, we have some questions coming in here. Let's start with Ryan, who said, last night I spent a long time not falling asleep, but I kept reminding myself that I was safe and that I cannot force sleep. Any other advice about how to deal with these periods? Nice question. Thanks for being with us here, Ryan. And what do you say when you hear this, Alina?
Well, I mean, generally, like, I like this idea when you need to remind yourself, like, that you are, to show the brain that you are safe. And usually when people kind of understand that at first, it might make sense. And at some point, they begin kind of like relying on this mental exercise too much, thinking that, okay, I need to keep reminding myself, like consciously doing this exercise so that I can fall asleep. But what I find tricky, and this is, I'm taking it from my personal experience, because at some point I also was like reminding myself that I'm safe. It gave me this kind of moment of relief, where I felt like less pressured, so sleep was not being an issue. But then at some point, when I kind of started using this concept as some sort of like a tool to achieve this goal, this is when things got tricky, because I could remind myself, like, I don't know, hundreds of times that I'm safe, but my brain would go like, I'm not buying this, and I would keep struggling. And I don't know, I get this feeling from this question that maybe if if you search for something more, it kind of, maybe you're in this kind of situation where you feel that it's not enough just to remind yourself that you're safe. And in this case, I just want to say that the brain doesn't learn by rational arguments. So we cannot persuade our brain that we are safe just simply by saying it. In my opinion, that we need to show the brain that you are indeed safe in a way of actually going through speed bumps, going through hyperarousal moments, and in the end showing that you actually survive that, and actually the brain, by seeing it, not just by being told to that you are safe, actually learns this way. So it has to see it to believe it. So I would say that just maybe to be mindful that it's not really about the reminders as such, like just you need to keep reminding yourself that you are safe and then sleep will come. It's not about that, because alone mantras don't really work, like they cannot put you to sleep. But understanding why you are safe, and being willing to experience things just to see that in the end of the day you are still alive. And there is no way that you wouldn't get through this, because how so many people struggle with insomnia, and there are definitely a lot of difficult emotions and difficult experiences, but then once the speed bump is over, they're still sane, they're still healthy, and so on. So that's the biggest proof that the brain needs to see, and we might not be fully realizing it, but the brain kind of sees it, so it kind of counts this experience also counts. And at some point, eventually, the brain stops being even surprised by those speed bumps, and then it just knows that, yeah, even if I will have certain like speed bump, or if I will have some delayed sleep onset, I will still be okay. And that kind of knowledge will come from deep inside, not just by trying to rationalize it and just say that you are safe. So something like this. But I wonder what are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, thanks for yeah, I agree with everything you said, of course. And I think I only had one thing to add to this, to Ryan and anybody else that has a similar thing, which is that I think anything that isn't trying to make ourselves sleep or convincing ourselves that we're okay is really helpful. And it doesn't matter what it is, what that is when it takes a long time to fall asleep, whether it is, reading a nice book, listening to a podcast, just resting, anything that isn't trying to force sleep is, teaching the brain that we are safe. So I think, and all that matters, all that helps, I should say. Helps is the word I was looking for. Rowdy says, hello, Daniel. What would the chances of developing SFI at 19 be? Are memory problems something to worry about? Do you get these questions a lot, Alina? What do you say when you hear this?
I got maybe a couple of those, because mostly like people, like when I interact with people who on my channels, they usually come from you, so majority of them already understand this CFI issue. But yeah, I met a couple of times with these kind of questions, and I know that once I googled my insomnia, I also had this period of time where I was like super scared of that strange disease, and it always felt like maybe I'm the one, like it's, even though in all the articles it says like there are like maybe I don't know how many 10, 20 people in the world,
20 something confirmed
yes,
cases every year.
like throughout the whole history, and then I felt like, okay, but maybe I'm special, maybe I kind of like won the lottery. And I assume that everyone kind of feels this way, like maybe I'm the one. But my thinking here is that actually by you worrying about that kind of shows that that's really like not the case, because I remember watching like also this really good episode with I forgot what was his name,
Casper?
but yeah, Casper, yes, who actually was the one who witnessed someone having this issue, and then the description, what he said, is like nothing to do with what typical insomniac goes through. So I would say, I perceive it as a kind of like expected part of the journey, like being afraid of having this CFI. But at some point, you will see that even though you have anxiety and so on, but sleep still happening, it will happen eventually. And then with more experiences like that, then you will get the proof that, okay, then it's probably just typical insomnia and nothing like this.
Yeah, absolutely. You point that out. It's almost like something of a rite of passage. So many people have had this exact fear, and again, just pointing out that when we have a fear, that explains so much. Like fear explains why we don't sleep. Fear can explain why we have problems with memory, right? Fear can explain like all these kinds of experiences. And again, nothing is medical advice here to Rowdy or anyone else, but fear explains so many things. And by the way, like the question itself, like what are the chances, and trying to figure out, and probability and self-monitoring and figure out, is this, that in itself is so much a part of a fear. So yeah, hope that helped, Rowdy. We have Andrea here, who just said, happy to be here. I'm a member and I love the community forum. So glad to hear this from Andrea, who I know quite well, actually. Super nice. Beth is here too. What a gift the world, what a gift to the world that will be. I think she's talking to you about your course, Alina.
Oh, thank you, Beth.
All right, Andrea actually had a question here. My question, what connection do you see with improving sleep and taking on other problems or challenges in life? Nice question. What do you think when you hear this, Alina?
I love this question. That's actually like one of these kind of, I'm kind of passionate about, because, once you understand insomnia, understand the laws, how it works, and you understand that it's kind of like in itself, it's a very pointless game. It's an illusion, basically. We are trying to somehow manage the illusion that we can control sleep, that we can, learn how to sleep better, more efficiently, and so on. But then once you kind of uncover that illusion, then you start seeing other things in life, let's say relationships you have with others, or anything, like as you and Daniel, you oftentimes talk about this, relationship between parents and children and so on. So I would say that, the connection like here is definitely, strong. And if I understand this question correctly, but just maybe like correct me if not, but basically, after realizing that, insomnia is based on that kind of an illusion that we have, then we can go on and just, try to apply the same principles that we learned on other areas of life, and see what happens if that leads you to more kind of like relief and some, better outcomes, or in terms of, let's say, relationship or something, that maybe it's good kind of philosophy to apply in general. But if I'm taking, like, now I'm reading this question, maybe if I understood, maybe the other way how to understand this question could be, what connection do you see in improving sleep and taking on other. So if meaning that that when you have insomnia, that you need to also solve other things in your life first in order to help with sleep. I don't know.
I think when I see this, I think you already, like, the way you answered it initially, I think was the way Andrea meant it.
Okay.
And just to spin off of that, what you said, I would say that, as you said, like, there's an illusion that we can control sleep, and that gets us into a lot of trouble. And there's so many of those illusions in our life, right? The illusion that we can, that other people's opinion of us or our work is something we can control, is an illusion. And other people's thoughts and emotions, our own thoughts and emotions. And when we start seeing that, we see it everywhere. We see, like, oh, I'm doing things to control things I can't, and that really, I think, changes everything. So hope that makes sense to Andrea. And again, if we misunderstood in any way, just comment again. Okay, cool. Let's go continue with I'm gonna say Thanmayi, who says, how I used to sleep before was I used to think about something, and that would drift me off to sleep unknowingly. But now, when I'm almost drifting off to sleep, I become aware of it, and it wakes me up. Something we come across many times. Thanks for sharing this, Thanmayi. And yeah, Alina, what do you think when you hear this?
I had this problem, and I know what, that is one of the most annoying experiences that we can have during insomnia. And it kind of it gives us this kind of thought that if before we could think about something random, and then it could, like, easily drift us, to sleep, then we try to sometimes to recreate that. We try to, okay, then I'm just going to think about some random thing and just see what happens. But because, insomnia is based on fear, and this is something that, once the fear is involved, meaning that our the emotional part of the brain, let's say this limbic system, amygdala, the ones who are really responsible for things that are happening during insomnia, then once certain kind of topic or certain area in life kind of gets in on the radar of amygdala, for example, this is when we unintentionally start kind of like focusing on that, because it's like, now it's not enough just to think about random like things and just like drift off. Now it's kind of, this part of the brain is being super vigilant, and this is what kind of creates this like hyper awareness when falling asleep. And actually, like, maybe a couple of months ago, I wrote an article about this topic, and the most important like thing I would highlight from there is that, this hypervigilance comes as a part of that automatic process that is happening, meaning that the brain just detects danger, so it now is being vigilant. But in itself, hypervigilance really doesn't harm like in itself. So by becoming more open to experience that, like to know that where it comes from, understand that it's not here to actually to disturb your sleep, but more like an automatic response to a trigger, then we kind of like can change the relationship with it. Because once we change relationship with our hyperarousal, with anxiety, with any sensations or physical sensation that we might have, this is when the whole game changes, because then these things just stop being so prominent with time. And we can view it different ways. Of course, hypervigilance when we fall asleep can be viewed as an obstacle to sleep, definitely, because like you falling asleep and then you're monitoring yourself, and the moment when you transition you kind of wake up. But then there's another way to look at it, which is take it as a sign that you are actually, the body is ready to transfer to sleep, like to go to sleep. And of course, okay, now because the brain is like extra vigilant, this might kind of disrupt sleep. But what it actually means, this moment when you kind of become more awake, is that the body is actually trying to initiate the process of sleep, meaning that all the mechanisms are working properly. So it's just a matter of our relationship with that hyperarousal that we need to kind of like maybe work on. But other than that, it's kind of like we can take it as good news that the body is ready to go to sleep.
Definitely. Well said. And this reminded me of like another thing that I actually randomly talked about with Michelle last week, which was how things that aren't efforts can become efforts, and things that aren't efforts can not become efforts again. Meaning, like a lot of people say that, okay, before I used to exercise in the evening and I used to sleep really well, or before I used to do some meditation in the evening and I used to sleep really well. But now when I do that, it doesn't work anymore, which just shows us that the random thoughts Thanmayi had in the past, they weren't making her sleep, right? Or them sleep, I should say. And similar as exercise didn't make anyone sleep. But then when we have the struggle, we go back and scan like, oh, what did I do before that I'm not doing now? And then we can find things, and then we try to apply them again. But then the attempt, the trying leads us to have some struggle. So I think in addition to what you said about like looking at the sudden awakening as kind of like a sign that we're transitioning to sleep, like this also could really help seeing this. So I hope that makes sense to Thanmayi. Jake is here, longtime follower. Highly good to see you in open class. Best of luck to both of you. Thanks so much, Jake.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you here. And let's talk about this one. I think that we'll maybe conclude with this, or maybe do one or more question. But let's take a look at this one. Bhaswat says, how can I sleep when I have a nocturia, when I kind of find myself peeing all the time? I have been to urologists, and they say there's nothing physiological. Pretty common. I've come across this a few times, and I can go first here, Alina. So it's actually nice to be the second one answering, because when the first one is answering, you get some time to reflect, right? But I think of it this way. So firstly, I'm glad, as we said before, nothing is medical device. Glad you already saw a urologist. And if you think about like all us humans, we often have these common experiences that we don't necessarily think of as strange because they're in context. For example, before I go on a call like this or start recording a video or something, I often feel like I need to use the bathroom first, right? And I think that has to do with, and many people have the same experience, it just has to do with that's kind of our body's way of preparing ourselves for something that requires some concentration effort, that's a little special. It's kind of like just a normal preparation for something that we're anticipating. And I think a lot of people have that experience. But then what can happen is that when we're starting to anticipate something that we think is require work, some struggle, and we started to think of sleeping that way, then we can often feel like, okay, time to go to bed. I got to get myself ready for everything. Everything has to be perfect. I better pee. And then we kind of back in bed and like, dang it, I need to pee again. But it's just the body really saying like, be prepared. Do everything you can do to be prepared. And then we can have this cycle of like, a lot of people tell me like, I used to pee like 20 times every night. It happened all the time. And then the same person, when they start learning about sleep and the hyperarousal goes down, then that just stops happening. So that's sort of what I think when I hear this. And I think often what helps the most is to know that it's nothing strange or uncommon, quite common. And Claire Weeks, by the way, talks a lot about this in her books. But yeah, anything to add to that, Alina? What do you think?
I completely agree that it's one of this kind of like the expectation of that happening is like what makes it like more, kind of repeating itself, this kind of experience. And I also when I was talking to people, I also noticed that this kind of question was popping up like from time to time. And of course, like, we are not doctors, we cannot really tell like whether you should check or not, but I see that this is common. And actually I was studying this question, understanding like how anxiety, whether it has some connection with the bladder. Yeah, like, and then I actually found that there are like this like, how to say, like nerves or something like this, that they are kind of going through like through our whole body, and there are parts that kind of can react to that, that can kind of create some sort of like a spasm in bladder, which can make kind of us feel like we need to go to the bathroom. In reality, it's also kind of like stress induced. And what I noticed is that this kind of like, if you take it as a hyperarousal symptom, then usually during insomnia, what I noticed is that we tend to focus on one particular symptom at a time, or maybe on couple at a time. But with time, these symptoms kind of like shift form. So then we become something else. So for example, for me, it was before, it was like my stomach felt very bad. So and every time I was feeling nervous, I could immediately feel it only in stomach. Then it changes. It changed in the form of I had like, I don't know, back pain or something like this. So it was more like, like coming and going, like changing its forms. And what I noticed, that the more I was paying attention to it, the more sticky it was, it was getting. Like some people say that, they have like, they hear ringing in ears, and then when they focus on it, it just becomes like even more loud. So I would say that yeah, exactly, with this kind of like focusing on it and trying to get rid of it, we tend to kind of reinforce it, but also knowing that it's not a permanent thing. It's just our perception of insomnia changes with time, and sometimes different things might pop up, like let's say then it will be about like heart palpitations or something like that, and then you will be focusing on them. So yeah, but in general, yeah, like what you said, completely agree with that.
Nicely put. And yeah, there was something I want to ask. Yes, Sarah. If you want to check out a success story on the channel, you can look up Sarah, Sara, her story, and she talks about peeing frequently in her story there. Rowdy says thanks for responding, and thank you for being here. Andrea says the same. Thanks for replies anytime. And Lara says you got this. I think that's the message to the community. So perfect time to end out. So nice having you here, Coach Alina. Thanks for being here, and hope to have you back soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.